Hello everyone, this is Cameron Schrader. I've got an overview of one of my liquid drum and bass tracks in FL Studio. Um, this is a new track of mine that I just finished called Subliminal. Um, it's got a nice dark and chill vibe to it. And as you can see, it's pretty simple. Um, I don't really have time to do a full drum and bass tutorial right now. Uh, So I figure I can just quickly break down this track. First, before I start breaking it down, I'll show you what it looks like since it's not released yet. What it sounds like, not what it looks like. Stop it right there. So that's the gist of the track. I generally start my drum and bass tracks by writing the chords first, or I might start with piano stabs or chords or whatever. In this case, I did start with the piano. I wrote this song using 11th chords. So an F minor 11, a D sharp major 11, and a G sharp major 11. And those sound like. Nice jazzy chords. The piano that I'm using is Native Instruments, the Grandeur. I've got 4 Native Instruments pianos. I usually end up using the Grandeur or the Gentleman, but most of my tracks end up using the Grandeur. The Giant is. I wouldn't ever use the Giant for drum and bass, as it sounds a little too poppy, or it has too much of an EDM sound to it, so I wouldn't ever use the Giant, but other than that, these other 3 are good choices for drum and bass. And then, after I wrote the chords, or the piano chords, well, first off, these are playing once for the most part, but then on the third time they play it, it plays twice, if that makes any sense. So once here and then twice here, just to add some groove to the track. After that, I did the pads. The pad is being shifted up an octave. It's just a pretty typical saw pad with only 2 oscillators. One oscillator with the retrig on, one with the retrig off. Both with a bunch of detuning, a cutoff filter, and then I have the cutoff all the way up because I'm using FabFilter Simplon to filter the cutoff. And then a pretty simple amp envelope. So here's what the pad sounds like. So I've got Pro C compressing it, and then I've got a cut here, a low cut that's at around 200 hertz, just because I don't ever want anything lower than that coming out of my pads in a drum and bass track. And that was just that cut is just to be safe, because we're actually cutting it even lower on FabFilter Simplon. FabFilter Simplon is the absolute best filtering tool out there. I use it for the cutoff. I use it for the cutoff for pads on pretty much all of my tracks. We're cutting the low frequencies at about 400 hertz. I used to only do a cut at about 200 hertz, but I've found that you can get your pads sounding really lush if you cut them at 400 and make way for other melodics. So after I had these two, I had an idea for a swell pad, which sounds like this. And this swell pad is just copying the corresponding chord. It's using it's using almost the exact same amp envelope. It's using actually a sine wave, which is kind of weird. I'm not sure if I did that intentionally, but it sounds good. With a bunch of detuning and a saw wave with a bunch of detuning. And then I played around. I added a modulation envelope. Set it for cutoff, and I played around with these until I had something that sounded nice and large, I guess. And then I compressed it with the exact same compression that I was using on the other pads. Then I cut it at 200 hertz. Then I added an assload of reverb on it, and it's being sidechained by the sidechain kick. Oh, by the way, these pads are also being sidechained twice. They've got just a 4 out of 4 sidechain from kickstart, and then they get sidechained by the kick in the track. Whereas these only get sidechained by the kick. So those together, with all these three together, you have something that sounds like this. So with just those three elements, you already have something that sounds pretty atmospheric. And then this was going to be a melody. This was going to be a melody, and then I put these 5 plucks, these 5 notes together, and was like, wow, that sounds pretty good on its own. So I played it at the end of every 16 bars. This is just a sine pluck with plucky amp envelope. It's got 8 voices, no detuning. It's going up an octave. It's got some decimate distortion. The exact value is 2.86. There's no cutoff envelope. There is a pitch modulation envelope, which gives a nice blip sound, or I don't know how to explain it. This has... It's being compressed. It's got some 1 out of 4 delay. just stereo delay. This is a free plugin called Bionic Delay, and it's one of the best delay plugins out there. It's up there with Classic Delay. And until FL20 came out, I was only using Bionic Delay, and it's being sidechained. What else? So after I did those, I wrote the drums. I get my kicks from Vengeance packs for the most part. Generally, the only thing the Vengeance packs are good for are D&B kicks and hi-hats. So you can just take any sort of house kick, and you want to shorten it a bunch by raising the out level. Then you'll clone it and rename the second one sidechain kick, which is this one, and you'll mute it. This is my second master track. Right here is insert one. Everything's linked here and then goes to the master channel. It's just something that I do. You're going to, so for sidechaining in FL Studio, you're going to go to this tab over here. You're going to move all these down to 0, and aside from the hold. The hold you're going to lower until you're just getting the part of the kick that you want to do the sidechaining, which is generally just the snap. The kick I don't think is being processed. Yeah, it's not being processed, and I can get away with that. The only thing I'm doing to the kick is mono. You always want to have your kick and sidechain kick monoed, which on FL20 is this knob right here, and you want to raise it to 100% merged. The snare, so these two snares, I layer my snares in drum and bass because I haven't ever found one sample that I'm happy with. This is from a Rimshot pack. I found these for free on some hip-hop forum that I found through Google. I think I literally just Googled Rimshot samples. And these samples are really good. If you can find that, I would recommend downloading it. The other two samples are from the Lensman drum and bass pack. Yeah, Deep and Soulful D&B. This is one of my favorite packs for snares. So that sounds pretty good on its own. Then I did the hi-hats. I usually have one hat that's playing on every beat. And then I have one that's playing on every beat and off beat, or every 2 steps basically. In this track I have 2 hats playing on the beat. And then one that gives and then another hat that gives the track a nice rolling feel. So with the kick, that sounds like this. And then our ride. Alright, so the processing for all of this, The snare has a compressor, and then it's being EQ'd a little bit. The hats, all 4 hats are linked to this, and they're being EQ'd. And the ride is being EQ'd. I think I probably dropped the same EQ that was on the hats into here, and it has some reverb on it. It has a lot of reverb on it. And then I got some loops. So these loops, this one is from Linsman's pack. This one is from Linsman's pack. This one, I have no idea where it's from. I think I know where it's from. Yeah, it's from this liquid drum and bass pack. I think this pack is from Sample Magic. I don't know. I bought it last year. It took me like 10 times trying to download it from the website. So with all that together, first off the loops together, and then with the hats and kick and snare. So after that, the only thing I really had to do, one of the only few things I had left to do was the bass. I started with a sub. I initially started with just a sustained bass, but I came back to this a day later and with fresh ideas, and had the idea of implementing a nice, almost 808 type bass. The only reason this isn't an 808 is because there's no pitch modulation on it. So the sustain is left all the way up, and the release is brought up until it had a nice decaying feeling. Other than that, it's a sine wave, and there's nothing else changed with the sound. No stereo width. The processing for this is an EQ that I use on all of my sub basses. Second, I didn't think that the track sounded good with just a sub, but I thought the mids were pretty empty, so I decided to add a Reese. But again, without a full sustain, and just add release. So with your Reese basses, you just want to bring the octave down twice. A Reese will have anywhere from 2 to 4, sometimes 5, but usually 2 or 3 voices. It'll have an ass load of detuning, and the stereo width will be somewhere around the halfway mark. You'll filter it with a 24 hertz low cut cutoff filter. You'll have the cutoff down fairly low, and then you'll have the resonance up pretty high. I usually make my Reese's in Serum, but Silent worked for this track. And then occasionally I'll throw a chorus onto a Reese, and I'll have the rate really low. And sometimes I won't even have the dry and wet in the middle. I'll have the wet sound pretty low. But usually I don't have a chorus at all. It just sounded really nice in this track, so And I don't think there's any processing. Yeah, there's not any processing on this. So together it sounds like this. And you might notice that the Reese has less release to it. That's totally intentional. Less release than the sub bass. That's totally intentional. Is because I just wanted the Reese to hit really fast. The bass is being sidechained. It's got TP bass lane on it. TP bass lane is essential to your bass buses. Basically every frequency lower than this frequency will be monoed. So everything that's below 185.4 hertz is going to be monoed. And this is just good for mixing because you don't want to have any stereo width to your sub bass. It's got some sausage fattening going on, and it's got some saturation. And for whatever reason, it's got... Oh wait, you know what? I know why that's there. It's got FabFilter Simplon. Which is being automated at the beginning, in the breakdown, and then at the end of the track. And you can mostly see it here. So at the end of the track, it's only the Reese bass playing. Let me mute that. Another thing that's being automated with the bass is the Reese's cutoff and resonance is being modulated. So we can show that off real quick. Just this adds some energy to the track. So after that, I had a choice. After I was done with that, with the bass, I had a choice. I could throw in a melody in the second part of the drop, or I could throw in some samples, and I decided to throw in some samples. I knew that I wanted to release this track for free, so I just decided to go with Clara's vocal library, which is what all three of these samples are from. The first sample is pitched down an octave. The second sample isn't pitched down at all, and then the third sample is pitched down an octave. So you get something that sounds kind of nice. And then another thing that I did with these is that I put a gate on them. And it sounds kind of bad when it's soloed, but whenever it's playing with the rest of the track, it sounds pretty good and it's really subtle. And it only plays, it's only being gated on this first sample. But with the reverb and pads playing, it's kind of hard to tell that it's being gated, but once you notice it, it's like, you're like, hey, that sounds pretty good. So those play in the second part of the drop, at the end of the track, and in the breakdown. Trying to think. I think I've gotten everything. After I was done with that, I basically just added a crash in two parts of the track, and then added some noise sweeps. The sidechain, the kickstart sidechain on the pad is being modulated. So it's not being sidechained right now. for the breakdown, but then when we're going towards the second drop, it turns back on again, and then it turns off towards the end of the track, and then it turns on towards the first drop. This is the pad modulation. I guess I just forgot to finish it, but the track sounds fine without any more pad modulation. And typically, if something sounds fine or good, even, I won't do anything extra to it. This isn't my most recent drum and bass track that I finished. The other ones that I finished are both supposed to be vocal tracks, so the instrumental parts of those tracks are finished, but the tracks themselves are not entirely finished. So yeah, I'm not sure why I was saying that. One thing before I leave off is that in your drop, you want to vary your drum beat every 16 bars. I found that the first variation that I liked in this track was to actually just turn the kick and snare off for a couple bars so that the bass could shine through. And then the second variation that I did was just a rolling drum pattern. That's pretty much it. I think I've covered everything. Drum and bass production can be pretty simple if you let it be that way. If anyone has any questions, let me know. But yeah, this has been Cameron Schrader. This track will be out about a week from when the video drops. It's called Subliminal. Keep an eye out for it on Emergent Shores, or you can just follow me on SoundCloud, or I'll repost it whenever it gets released. See you guys.